Varun Arora was the quiet son everyone trusted. Maya Arora was the protective sister who noticed the cracks. Rajiv and Shalini Arora were the proud parents blinded by love, and none of them realized that a psycho killer was hiding inside their perfect family home in New Delhi. The Arora family of New Delhi seemed like the kind of household everyone admired from afar. Their two-story home stood neatly in a quiet residential lane, surrounded by trimmed hedges and a polished iron gate that gleamed under the sun. From the outside, nothing ever looked out of place. The house was filled with laughter during festivals, decorated with lights during Diwali, and always gave the impression of warmth and unity. To neighbors, the Aroras were a model of grace and success, a family untouched by the chaos of the city beyond their walls. Rajiv Arora, the head of the family, worked as a respected lawyer, who was often mentioned in newspapers for his courtroom victories. His reputation gave the family a shield of respect that very few dared to question. Inside the house, Shalini Arora maintained an aura of kindness. She was the type of mother who baked sweets for the neighbors' children and offered help without being asked. She loved hosting gatherings where her warmth was always the center of attention. Friends described her as the heart of the family, and her presence created a sense of comfort that everyone associated with the Arora home. Maya, the elder daughter, had chosen a simple life compared to her father's ambition. She taught at a nearby school, earning respect from both students and colleagues. She was quiet, observant, and deeply attached to her family, often protecting them from outside criticism. Her world revolved around her home, her students, and her younger brother, Varun Arora, was the youngest, and perhaps the most mysterious. He had graduated recently, but had not yet decided on a career. Unlike Maya, who lived in routines, Varun was unpredictable. He was intelligent, often reading unusual books, and browsing for hours on subjects most people found unsettling. To anyone outside, he seemed soft-spoken, polite, and maybe even shy. At family functions, he rarely talked much, preferring corners and silence. Yet his calm demeanor often earned sympathy. People excused his quiet nature, calling him thoughtful and reserved. His parents, proud of their children, dismissed his lack of direction as just a phase of youth. On the surface, everything looked harmonious. The family had dinners together, celebrated birthdays, and took vacations that filled albums with smiling photographs. Their neighbors would wave when passing by, always envying how well the Aroras kept their lives together. Yet behind those closed doors, subtle cracks began to form. Late at night, while Rajiv prepared for court cases and Maya finished her lesson plans, Varun often retreated into the basement, locking the door behind him. When asked, he claimed he was studying or working on personal projects. Shalini, protective as ever, never pressed him for answers, while Maya grew curious about the long hours he spent hidden away. The first unsettling signs didn't come from within the house, but from around the neighborhood. Cats and stray dogs, once common in the streets, began to vanish. Residents talked quietly about missing pets, yet no one raised alarm. Broken objects, blood-stained scraps of fabric, and abandoned shoes appeared near empty plots, not far from the Arora home. These oddities unsettled people, but suspicion never fell upon a family so respected. The Arora's reputation acted like a shield, blinding neighbors to the possibility of danger lurking close. Varun's behavior, though subtle, was gradually shifting. He spent less time with his family and more time isolated, disappearing for hours without explanation. He returned with a strange calmness, as if carrying secrets too heavy for words. Maya noticed these patterns, but convinced herself it was temporary. After all, he was her younger brother, and she refused to think ill of him. Shalini brushed aside concerns, convinced her son was simply introverted. Rajiv, absorbed in his career, barely noticed these changes at all. For everyone outside the Arora home, the family still shone with perfection. They were admired, respected, even idealized. No one could have imagined that within their walls was a darkness waiting to be revealed. What seemed like a flawless family portrait was slowly becoming a mask, hiding something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The city would one day know that behind the polished gate and the perfect smiles, a secret lived in silence, waiting to shatter everything. Over the months that followed, the calm atmosphere around the Arora household began to shift in ways that few could properly explain. What started as whispers about odd occurrences in the neighborhood grew into quiet unease. The once peaceful streets of their New Delhi colony slowly turned into a backdrop for strange and unsettling events. It began with the sudden disappearance of pets, cats, dogs, and even birds that were usually seen around the neighborhood stopped appearing. Children cried when their puppies went missing, and parents grew concerned about the pattern. Though no one could identify the cause, neighbors blamed thieves or wild animals, but deep down there was a sense that something unnatural was happening. At the same time, disturbing objects were discovered in unexpected places. A single shoe was found abandoned in a vacant lot, its surface stained with what looked like blood. A torn handbag was left in a gutter, its contents scattered as if pulled apart deliberately. Stray pieces of clothing appeared in alleyways, some ripped and stained. The residents began talking among themselves, though always in hushed tones, careful not to accuse anyone directly. Their suspicion hovered like smoke in the air, but the Arora name, with all its prestige, was never spoken of in connection with these events. Respect acted like an invisible shield, protecting the family from even the faintest suggestion of blame. Within the Arora home, however, the changes were more personal. Maya, who spent most of her time teaching, began to notice her brother's strange routines. He no longer joined the family for dinners regularly, and often excused himself, slipping away to the basement. When she approached the door, she always found it locked, and faint noises seeped through the cracks. Sometimes the sound of dragging, sometimes what resembled muffled cries, though she convinced herself it was her imagination. Whenever she questioned him, Varun would respond with calm indifference, saying he was busy studying or needed privacy. Shalini, protective and trusting, accepted his excuses without hesitation, while Rajiv remained too buried in his legal work to notice. The unease deepened when Inspector Dev Malhotra entered the story. Known for his sharp instincts, Dev had been following a trail of unsolved assaults across the city. The victims were unrelated, the incidents seemed random, but the locations carried a strange pattern. Each crime site was within a short distance of the Arora residence, as though someone in their immediate environment had knowledge of the streets well enough to vanish without being seen. For weeks he studied the map, drawing circles that eventually led him back to the neighborhood. Karan Bhatia, a close family friend, also began noticing details that others ignored. During one visit, he caught sight of Varun returning home late at night, his clothes slightly disheveled, and his expression cold. Another time he found scratches on Varun's wrist, which he dismissed casually. The blood stain on Varun's jacket, discovered when Karan leaned against the basement doorframe, unsettled him the most. Though Varun insisted it was nothing, the image stayed in Karan's mind long after he left the house. He felt an inexplicable chill that suggested danger was closer than anyone dared to imagine. Meanwhile, the neighborhood continued to buzz with fear. Every new disappearance, every strange object, left in the open, added to the growing list of unsolved mystery. Mothers began keeping their children indoors, and families locked their gates earlier than usual. Still, no one dared to confront the Aroras. Their reputation remained intact, and the idea that their quiet, polite son could be connected to anything sinister seemed too impossible to believe. Yet the signs were there. Varun's late nights, the locked basement, The way he drifted further away from family routines. Everything hinted at a secret life unfolding beneath the surface. Those closest to him chose silence, whether from denial, love or fear. Outside, Inspector Dev was narrowing his search, his suspicions circling closer and closer to the very house that the entire city thought was untouchable. The perfect family image was beginning to blur, even if no one yet had the courage to say it aloud. The mask that Varun Arora wore so effortlessly began to crack in small, unsettling ways. For years he had managed to appear as the quiet, withdrawn son, a young man who kept to himself and rarely invited attention. But as the disturbances around the neighborhood grew, so did the unease within his own home. Maya had always been close to her brother, but she could not ignore the strange energy that clung to him lately. His silences no longer felt like simple shyness. They felt heavy, secretive and dangerous. Every time he passed her in the hallway, his eyes lingered a moment too long, as if he knew something she did not. The incident that shifted her suspicion into fear came during a visit from their family friend Karan Bhatia. Karan was casual and observant by nature, someone who noticed small details others missed. While speaking with Maya near the staircase, his eyes wandered to the basement door, where Varun's jacket was draped carelessly on a hook. A small dark stain along the sleeve caught his attention. When he leaned closer, he realized it resembled dried blood. He asked casually about it, and before Maya could answer, Varun appeared from nowhere, his calm voice explaining that it was nothing more than a kitchen accident. His composure was so complete that for a moment the explanation felt believable. Yet Karan left the house with unease pressing against his thoughts, certain that there was more to the stain than Varun admitted. That same night Maya lay awake in her room, the faintest sounds drifting up from the basement below. At first she thought it was the hum of an appliance, but as she listened closer, she realized it resembled soft whimpers or cries. Her body stiffened as fear tightened her chest. She forced herself to step into the hallway, tiptoeing down the stairs until she reached the locked basement door. Pressing her ear against the wood, she heard a dragging sound followed by silence. Her heart pounded violently, and she returned to her room without knocking, too terrified of what might happen if she confronted her brother directly. The following morning, the neighborhood buzzed with the news of another missing person. This time it was a university student, a young woman who had vanished after attending evening classes. Her disappearance was reported in the newspapers, along with a description of the last area she was seen. Maya's hands trembled as she realized it was only 2 streets away from their home. She couldn't shake the thought of the noises from the basement, or the stain on Varun's jacket, but she silenced herself. The bond of family, and her unwillingness to imagine such horror in her own home, kept her from speaking. Shalini noticed her daughter's anxiety, but assumed it was connected to her schoolwork. Rajiv, immersed in his legal battles, dismissed the atmosphere of unease entirely. Varun, however, seemed more relaxed than ever. His calm demeanor grew almost unnerving, as though he enjoyed the unfolding chaos around him. He would sit at the dining table, silently eating his meals, while his family tried to carry on with normal conversation. His silence was no longer harmless. It felt like an invisible weight pressing down on everyone. Inspector Dev Malhotra, meanwhile, was drawing the threads of his investigation tighter. His study of the missing persons revealed patterns others overlooked. Each disappearance occurred within walking distance of the Arora residence, each victim vanishing in areas where the streets were dimly lit and escape routes were familiar to someone who lived nearby. Though he did not yet have proof, Dev's instinct pointed him closer to the family. He began visiting the neighborhood more frequently, watching carefully, waiting for a break in the case. For Maya, the turning point came one evening when she tried once again to check on Varun. She noticed the faint metallic smell drifting up from the basement door, a smell she could not mistake for anything ordinary. Her fear deepened, yet still she hesitated, caught between love for her brother and the gnawing terror that he was hiding something unspeakable. What she did not yet know was that the truth, locked behind that basement door, was darker than anything she could imagine. The mask was slipping, and soon the family's perfect image would unravel completely. The day the truth began to surface was marked by an unusual stillness in the Arora household. The air felt heavier, as though the walls themselves carried secrets waiting to be exposed. Inspector Dev Malhotra had finally obtained the warrant he had been pursuing for weeks. His instincts had guided him back again and again to the Arora residence, each time confirming his suspicion that the quiet family hid something sinister. When the police cars pulled up outside the polished iron gate, neighbors gathered silently at a distance, their eyes wide with disbelief. The Aroras, who had once been held as a symbol of respect and grace in the community, were about to face scrutiny like never before. Rajiv Arora stood frozen as officers explained the purpose of their arrival. His reputation as a lawyer, built over years of work, now meant nothing in the face of suspicion. Shalini's voice cracked as she insisted that her family had nothing to hide, her trembling hands clutching her. Maya felt her legs weaken beneath her, unable to process the thought that their perfect image was under attack. Only Varun appeared unaffected. He stood in the corner, calm, detached, his expression unreadable. His silence unsettled everyone present, as though he had already accepted what was about to unfold. The search began with routine checks of the rooms. Officers opened wardrobes, examined drawers, and looked through shelves. The family watched in humiliation and fear, each movement of the police like a strike against their dignity. Nothing unusual was found upstairs, but when Inspector Dev directed his team to the basement, an unexplainable tension filled the air. Varun for the first time shifted his gaze, his eyes narrowing as if protecting something sacred. His stillness drew even more attention to the door that had long been locked and avoided. The officers forced it open. The creak of the hinges gave way to darkness, the heavy smell of dampness mixed with something metallic. As flashlights illuminated the space, the true horror emerged. Behind what appeared to be an ordinary wall was a hidden panel, crudely designed to conceal a secret chamber. When it was pried open, the officers froze at the sight before them. The room was filled with objects that should never have been there: bags, watches, pieces of jewelry, clothing items that had once belonged to the missing victim. Each item was arranged with disturbing precision, as though displayed in a shrine. On one table, photographs were spread out, chilling reminders of lives cut short. Some pictures showed people alive, smiling, unaware of the fate that awaited them, while others bore the evidence of torment. The basement's discovery silenced everyone. Shalini collapsed, her cries echoing in the suffocating room. Rajiv's hands shook uncontrollably as the truth assaulted his mind. Maya stood motionless, staring at the wall of trophies, unable to breathe as realization consumed her. All this time her brother had been living a double life beneath their feet, hiding his cruelty behind a mask of silence. The sound of her own heartbeat thundered in her ears as her world crumbled. Varun was finally pulled forward by the officers, his hands restrained, yet his expression remained eerily calm. There was no panic in his eyes, no attempt to deny what had been revealed. Instead, there was a strange satisfaction, as though he had been waiting for this moment of exposure. The family's pleas filled the house, but the evidence spoke louder than any defense. Inspector Dev had seen many crimes in his career, but the meticulousness of Varun's hidden collection revealed not just violence, but obsession. Outside, neighbors whispered in shock, their once admired family reduced to a symbol of horror. The Arora household, decorated for years as a place of celebration and respect, was now branded forever with the stain of brutality. The discovery in the basement shattered every illusion of normalcy. It revealed that the danger was never outside, never a stranger roaming the streets. It had been within the family all along. For the first time, the Aroras faced the unthinkable truth. Their son was not who they thought he was, and the image of perfection they had clung to was nothing more than a mask, hiding unimaginable darkness. Varun Arora's arrest sent shockwaves not only through his family, but across the entire city. News channels broadcasted live images of him being taken away in handcuffs, his face calm and unbothered, while his parents and sister were left in peace. For the people of New Delhi, It was unthinkable that a respected household, admired for years, had been hiding a predator beneath its roof. Headlines labeled him the psycho killer, a man who had blended into society so seamlessly that no one had guessed the darkness within. The family name, once spoken with respect, was now whispered with disgust and fear. In custody, Varun showed little emotion. During interrogations, he revealed details of his crimes with an unsettling clarity. He admitted to luring victims, watching them carefully before striking. He selected people who seemed vulnerable, students walking home late, lone travelers, even locals who trusted the quiet neighborhood streets. He explained how he would take something personal from each victim, an object that reminded him of the moment he controlled their lives. These trophies filled his secret chamber, turning his basement into a twisted museum. His voice remained calm, almost proud, as though every word he spoke was part of a story he had long written. Investigators realized they were not dealing with a man consumed by sudden rage, but someone who had carefully planned his double life, taking advantage of the trust his family and community had given him. For Varun Arora, the humiliation was unbearable. A man who had spent his career upholding justice in the courtroom now stood on the other side, known not as a lawyer but as the father of a murderer. He withdrew from his profession immediately, unable to face colleagues or clients. The shame ate away at him, and his once steady voice was reduced to silence. Shalini, devastated, became a shadow of the woman she once was. Her kindness and warmth faded into despair as she questioned herself endlessly. She had defended her son against suspicion, trusted his every excuse, and now carried the unbearable weight of guilt for not seeing the sign. She rarely left the house, retreating into a world of mourning not only for the victims, but for the child she believed she had lost long before his crimes were revealed. Maya, though equally shattered, chose a different path. She cooperated with the police, offering whatever insight she could about her brother's habits, his odd interests, and the nights he disappeared. She became the quiet witness to the unraveling of her family, torn between the love she once held for her brother and the horror of what he had become. Each memory of laughter or sibling affection now carried a stain, making it impossible for her to separate the brother she had grown up with from the predator the world now knew. Her strength came not from acceptance, but from a determination to face the truth, even when it crushed her heart. As the trial approached, the details of Varun's crimes dominated the media. His calm courtroom appearances shocked everyone. He showed no remorse, no shame, and no fear. Each new revelation added to the horror, from the number of victims to the precision with which he carried out his act. The judge, the lawyers, and even hardened officers found themselves unsettled by the way he spoke. His words detached yet chillingly detailed. In the end, the evidence was overwhelming, and the verdict was clear. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison, his name forever marked as one of the most disturbing killers the city had ever known. For the Arora family, however, the punishment did little to ease their suffering. Their home, once filled with light and admiration, became a prison of memories and shame. Friends no longer visited, neighbors avoided their gaze, and every corner of their house carried reminders of the hidden horrors they had ignored. The tragedy of the Varun Arora case was not only in the victims who lost their lives, but in the realization that evil had been hiding in plain sight, wearing the mask of family and trust. The story left a chilling lesson for the city. Sometimes the greatest dangers are not strangers lurking outside, but the ones who live within the walls we believe to be safe.